if you take the consumer out of this entire question, it's very hard to you're getting a slightly one-sided view of the costs and benefits of profit-driven capitalism, right? I mean, we could say, for example, that free trade has done some terrible damage to individual towns, companies, regions, industries even. And yet we easily forget at the same time that the cost of clothing, for example, in America is nothing compared to what it used to be. That the plenitude of consumer goods is far greater than it ever used to be. That the variety of restaurants and cafes and places you can go to are enormous and constantly growing. Isn't there a case for saying that some of this, that is clearly a burden for workers, is also a benefit for them as consumers, and that somewhere along the line, there's a wash here?
Mm-hmm. So several points in response to that. It's a very common argument that, okay, we've empowered Wall Street and empowered industry to ship jobs or otherwise, use labor arbitrage to drive down the cost of wages. But at least workers have benefited as consumers. There are several answers to that. The first is there are all sorts of cases in which you can have a higher wage economy without resulting in higher prices, right? So the higher wages could come out of existing profits that still allow, kind of managers and shareholders a fair return. But because of labor saving technology, you can have the same or fewer better paid workers than we do now. So that's one answer. The other one is, there's this assumption.
That's not something that's something that's always going to happen. If you're a restaurant and you're sticking to the schedules that you would like to stick to, and in which you employ people for the same hours every day regularly, whether there's demand or not, and you're next door to a restaurant that is operating on a much meaner, as it were, scheduling process, you will lose in the free market to the place that is saving more money, able to keep its prices low, able to adjust and stay in business better than the others. How do you counteract that argument?
Well, I mean, first of all, what we have to recognize is when you're dealing with the very low wage industries, right? When you're dealing with the working poor, these are, let's say, the bottom third of the labor force who are, living paycheck to paycheck and so on. The argument that, but for these low wages, they couldn't afford the services they themselves produce doesn't make sense, because they already can't afford the services that they themselves produce, right? What are the lowest wage industries? It's waiters and waitresses. I'm citing a Georgetown study. It's cooks, it's customer sales representatives, personal care aides, stock material movers, et cetera, et cetera. The assumption that all of these workers wouldn't be able to afford their own, the general kind of pool of products and services that they produce, but for the fact that they're low paid, is wrong, because already they can't typically afford the services that they themselves provide because of low wages.
My point is simply, they could lose their job entirely if the company that they're working for acts ethically in the way that there is a question of ethics here, of providing solid, stable, secure wages and hours. And so that makes them much worse off than not having even a job that is poorly paid, or that is paid well but very difficult to predict.
I mean, what we're doing right now is we're not empowering them as consumers. What we're doing is we're subsidizing the low wages paid to them by private sector employers, through welfare benefits, right? So we right now have a model of an economy which I think is the worst kind possible. It's a low wage, high benefit society.